Several stories are sending ripples across the internet. First, Elon Musk says he felt like he was dying after he got his second vaccination. And in line with this story, people are pointing out that in the media, they're reporting it is in fact heart attack and stroke season. And this is shocking to many people. Even I tweeted, what? Seriously, stroke season? I've never heard of this. Just the other day at dinner, we were talking about how we'd overheard people saying that it was now stroke season, and you're going to be seeing a lot of strokes. So I decided to dig into these stories to figure out what's really going on. And of course, the reason why these stories about stroke season, heart attack season, and Elon Musk's statement on the vaccine are in the same space is that's the conversation that's happening on Twitter. And while many people may say they believe there is a direct correlation, I'm not so sure. Don't look at me. I'm not a doctor. But I do have a ton of information to show you to help you make the decision for yourself. When you go and talk to your doctor and you ask them, make sure you have the right questions to ask. I don't exactly know what's going on, but I can say a few things right off the bat. Stroke and heart attack season are real. This was surprising to me because I didn't know anything about it, but I actually pulled up old archived studies and articles. In fact, they do see an increase in stroke and heart attack in the winter months for a variety of reasons. The stress of travel, overindulgence, and the cold. Surprising? Not really, actually, if you think about it. I mean, inclement weather, difficult times, you are going to see people suffer stress-related heart attacks. Now, that being said, there's still a large increase in strokes among young people and heart attacks. That's not adequately explained just by the season. So while people may be saying, you're going to see a lot more strokes and heart attacks, it's that time of the year. No, actually, something else is going on. There is an increase. Of course, the media says that it's likely COVID. COVID with spike proteins can cause strokes, clots, and all of these things in myocarditis. But we'll have to dig into that one and break this down. The Wall Street Journal reported that excess deaths unrelated to COVID among young people were I think it was more than half of all excess deaths during the pandemic. So there are real questions about what's going on and what's causing this. And there's a lot of things that could be contributing to an increase. For some reason, okay, and you guys comment below, there are people who want to immediately attribute this to the vaccine, which I honestly don't quite understand. Because, well, to be honest, COVID itself may have caused this. We watched videos pre-vaccine of people collapsing in the street, young people just slumping over, unable to breathe, cardiac arrest, things like that. Could that be the case? Could it be that the alpha strain of COVID was intense and it was causing a lot of people to collapse? And as it's weakened over time, only some people? Look, I'm not going to say I know for sure, but the other component is the Wall Street Journal reporting on the lockdowns and how you take away purpose from someone, they die. It's not that extreme. I don't want to exaggerate or anything like that. But I have read that the most likely time of death for an individual is right after they retire, losing a sense of purpose. If you've ever watched that documentary about people who live to be over 100 years old, what are they, centenarians or whatever the word is? One of the things that they share is purpose. There's like a video of like a 90-year-old guy chopping wood, and they're like, why don't you have someone younger do it? Younger? If I don't do it, no one will. I have to do this. I have to save my family. I have to support them. Locking everybody down, taking away social interaction, and giving them a mundane garbage existence, and you don't just get people losing purpose. You get suicides. You get people's health failing. They're not exercising. They're getting no sunlight. They're falling apart. I don't know. And I'm not telling you what to believe. I want to show you the news and break it down. And then you can talk to your medical professional about what makes the most sense. Because I got to be honest, man. I got to take more vitamin D. It's in winter. I realize this. Like everybody gets sick in winter and they say it's because it's cold. It's like, actually, it's because you're not getting sunlight anymore. And your body's not producing enough vitamin D. Makes tons of sense, doesn't it? Maybe. I don't know. Not a doctor. But let's read the news. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com to become a member and support our work directly. Click that join us button at timcast.com and you'll get access to exclusive uncensored segments from the Timcast IRL podcast Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. and the whole library of content going way back. It's a bit timely, so, some of the conversations might not play, but a lot of them are philosophy, culture, ethics, And I think it would be very entertaining for you. Plus the Cast Castle vlog. Got a lot of fun stuff happening there. But more importantly, you'll be supporting our cultural endeavors. We are going to be doing an event in Austin at the Vulcan Theater in April. You'll want to check that one out. I mean, you got to buy tickets, but with your support, we are not just sitting here talking to cameras. We got a team of employees. We got like 30 plus employees. We're building physical coffee shops. We're going to hang out. We are going to spread the word. We're going to create a culture based on meritocracy, individualism, freedom, liberty, responsibility, all that good stuff. So, timcast.com. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's read the story from the Daily Mail. Elon Musk claims he had major side effects from COVID booster shot that left him feeling like he was dying, and claims his cousin was hospitalized with inflammation of the heart. Elon Musk took to Twitter on the weekend to share his experience. He said, Musk51 shared his experience on Twitter. Share his experience of the COVID vaccine in response to a retweet of a poll that said 7% of adults claimed they experienced major side effects from the COVID vaccine. Now, the question is, how do you define major? I don't know if the Twitter thread did, but that's an important question, because we could be talking about people who could be downplaying something more serious, or they could be hyping up something less serious. Again, I'm not telling you what to believe. There's a lot of people who want to believe it either is or isn't. Let me just give you the information. So here are the tweets from Musk. He said, I had major side effects from my second booster shot. Felt like I was dying for several days. Hopefully no permanent damage, but I don't know. And my cousin, who is young and in peak health, had a serious case of myocarditis, had to go to the hospital. He was responding to Scott Adams. Scott Adams is going viral right now for saying the anti-vaxxers were right. Again, I don't know. You know, Scott Adams was very, very pro-vaccine and all that stuff. And there have been some studies. But I'll put it this way. As I often point out, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think this is a valid point. There are people that still tell me to this day that they believe COVID was a bioweapon manufactured in a lab that was either accidentally or unintentionally released. And I say, okay. I mean, look, the Wuhan Institute of Virology is right there where they claim the virus came from at the wet market or whatever. So the lab leak seems to make a lot of sense. Was it a bioweapon? That's semantics. Gain of function research was happening. Peter Daszak was funded by the NIAID, by Fauci, and then he used that funding for gain of function research. Here's my point. If COVID really was gain of function research, doesn't it stand to reason that all of this craziness you're seeing all at once is due to COVID? Here's a potential theory. Well, I'll say it first. A lot of people are coming out and saying, oh, the vaccines, oh, the vaccines, oh, the vaccines. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I don't know. And look, I'm not a doctor. I've read studies, and there are some studies saying one thing, some studies saying another thing. And I wish I could come out and just tell you I know for sure. So sure, consider the utopia style conspiracy. The other issue, the other potential is that COVID was accidentally leaked from a lab. It was horrifying gain of function research. And the reason they rushed out a vaccine as fast as possible is because they may have accidentally just destroyed the planet. You know, it's funny. I'm like, pick your conspiracy theory, man. Tell me which one you think is more plausible. And I mean it genuinely. I don't know. That's why I'm just like, bro, look, I don't know anything about this. I'm not the guy to tell you how to live your life or what to believe. I'm just here to talk about. I'll put it this way. When I have someone come and tell me, well, I think that it was manufactured as a weapon and was released, it's like, okay, well then why think the vaccine was what's killing people or causing strokes or whatever when it could literally just be COVID? Because we have videos of people collapsing in the street pre-vaccine. Some people are like, all this stuff didn't start happening until after the vaccine. I'm like, that's not true, man. In the first few months of the pandemic, there were tons of videos of people just falling down and just slumping over. Maybe it's COVID. Maybe it's a spike protein. I can't tell you, man. I really don't know. And I'll tell you this. Here's another conspiracy theory, because I've heard them all. And this is why I'm milquetoast fence sitter. You pick. One theory is that COVID never went away. And what we're seeing is still COVID. It never went away. We've heard this from a lot of mainstream journalists. That was never a justification for the lockdowns. I certainly don't think they should have locked things down. I think that should have been someone's choice. I don't think they should mandate anybody get medication. But think about it this way. The economy is on the verge of collapse. The lockdowns have persisted for a long time. What if the real conspiracy was they said, guys, COVID's still rampaging, but if we stay locked down any longer, then there's not going to be anything left to save. Reopen. And then some scientist is like, you fool, if you reopen now, COVID will start killing people. We'll see blood clots and strokes and myocarditis. And they're like, yeah, well, I'm not losing another 100 million this year. Reopen the country. I don't know, man. Tell me what you think in the comments. Because a lot of people, especially when you look at the global elite opinion on you will own nothing and you will be happy, it seems like they'd probably like the fact there are less human beings. So it's hard to know what to believe. Anyway, when asked why he had gotten the second booster, Musk said that it was not his choice, but because it was a requirement to fly to Germany. It is unclear which trip Musk is referring to, yada, yada. I gotta be honest, I don't believe him. And look, I like Elon Musk, but I don't believe him. I don't believe him because, man, I know billionaires, all right? And they tell me when they fly places on PJs, there's no requirements for anything. They don't even check their passports. Now, maybe Germany's much more strict, fine, so maybe I shouldn't say I don't believe him. But I just think it's kind of suspect. The richest man in the world is like, I was trying to fly there and they had a mandate. It's like, bro, I know people who, like, I've had people personally tell me they own private jets and they're like, no, we don't do any of that stuff. You fly into a private airport, you fly from like, the Emirates into Europe and you land at a private airport. Ain't nobody asks you any questions. You land and you just walk out. No passport stamp, nothing. I don't know, but maybe Elon Musk flies commercial or maybe they were very strict. He said he had COVID before any vaccines were made available, which he described as a mild cold. I'm going to go out and say, not in my case. I don't know, maybe it was because I weighed 200 pounds, a little heavier, whatever the reason, and part Asian. But when I got COVID, it was like, it was bad. It was the worst illness I've ever experienced. I remember I had the flu. COVID was bad for me. I'm not saying it's bad for everybody. It was just bad for me. He says they then had the J&J vaccine with no bad effects, except my arm hurt briefly. First mRNA booster was okay. The second one crushed me. Wait, so you mean Elon got 3 shots? I mean, that's a lot. I don't know. I don't know about mixing and matching or anything like that. Apparently, that's what he did. Let me show you some of the stuff that's causing that's lighting things. I don't want to stick just to this whole. You've heard me make the arguments a million times about the various conspiracy theories. Look, man, I just don't know, and I'm not here to tell you to believe anything. The smartest thing I think you can do is what like Joe Rogan and I did. You find a doctor who you can ask these questions to. They answer it. If they don't have the answers to basic medical questions, you need to find a good doctor. Here's a tweet from Viva Fry. I think you should hear this. This is interesting. Let me see if
So what is this link between influenza, infection, and stroke?
Yeah, I didn't know about this either until last year, but it turns out that after flu season, about 3 or 4 weeks later, there is a stroke season. And
okay, full stop. He's right. I saw this and I was like, what? And then I did some research, pulled up some old articles, and I said, this is from a long time ago. There is a stroke season. Didn't know that. But then he says this.
Like you said, most of Canada is getting down off of a big hump of flu. So now we're starting to see more strokes. And a friend of one of my colleagues actually mentioned that at work the other day. Said, have you noticed how many strokes we're seeing? It's a lot more than usual, it feels like. So anecdotally, we're starting to see that.
A lot more than usual. That is the question. Stroke season to me is unalarming. The fact that we're seeing more makes me ask these questions. WebMD says COVID vaccine and myocarditis. They say as efforts to improve the U.S. COVID vaccination rates move forward, one of the side effects gaining attention is an inflammation of the heart called myocarditis. They go on to say that it's the inflammation of the myocardium around the heart, and it can be caused by drug reactions or viral infections. It can happen to anyone. They say it can range from mild to severe, chest pain, shortness of breath, heart flutter, rapid abnormal heart rhythms, swelling of your ankles if it's more severe, feet, fatigue. I think the swellings in your ankle is because your heart's not pumping enough and the blood's starting to pool or something. Again, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. And in children, it could be fever, fainting, a hard time breathing, rapid breathing. They say, what can the COVID-19 vaccine cause heart inflammation? WebMD says yes, but experts aren't sure what the link is. Only about 1,000 people have gotten vaccine-related myocarditis. So far, it seems to occur in adolescent and young adult males 16 or older after the second dose of one of the 2 mRNA vaccines within several days after getting the vaccine. So maybe that's something would happen to Elon Musk. Again, I don't know. And look, WebMD, they're NewsGuard certified. So I don't have to tell you. YouTube, you got problems with it? I don't have to tell you. This is in the news, okay? We also have this from heart.org. Deadly type of stroke increasing among younger and middle-aged adults. This is from February 4th, 2022. They say, New cases of a debilitating and often deadly type of stroke that causes bleeding in the brain have been increasing in the U.S., growing at an even faster rate among younger to middle-aged adults than older ones, new research shows. The finding shows an 11% increase over the past decade and a half in intracerebral hemorrhage strokes, referred to as ICH strokes. The research being presented next week at the American Stroke Association's International Stroke Conference was published Thursday in the American Heart Association journal, Stroke. Quote, "From a public health perspective, these results are troubling and indicate risk factors are not being well managed in young adults in the U.S., said Dr. Karen Fury, chief of neurology at Rhode Island Hospital and chair of the Department of Neurology at Brown University's Warren Alpert Medical School in Providence. Fury was not involved in the research. Earlier onset of this disease is very alarming and indicates we need to be more aggressive with primary prevention. They say ICH strokes occur when blood vessels in the brain rupture and bleed. They are the second most common type, accounting for 10 to 15 of the estimated 795,000 strokes each year. 18.9 million people had an intracerebral hemorrhage, according to AHA's most recent heart attack and stroke report. They are more deadly and more likely to cause long-term disability than other types of stroke. I'm just going to come out and say it. It could be COVID causing this. I don't know. Don't take my word for it. Ask a doctor. From Seattle Times, U.S. heart attack deaths jumped sharply among young adults in second year after pandemic. This is what has people thinking it's the vaccine, that we weren't seeing heart attacks pre-vaccine. We were seeing people collapse. No idea why. No idea why. You make your own determinations. Talk to a doctor. As the number of COVID-19 infections surged during the pandemic, deaths from heart attacks rose sharply as well, with adults ages 25 to 44 experiencing the most significant increases, according to new research from scientists at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. The dramatic rise in heart attacks during the pandemic has reversed what was a prior decade-long steady improvement in cardiac deaths. We are still learning from many ways by which COVID-19 affects the body, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, or race. Of course, the establishment narrative is that heart attacks are are being caused by COVID. COVID is causing these heart attacks. While other infections, such as the flu, are known to lead to a slightly increased risk of heart attacks, the Cedars-Sinai Research Center, they could find nothing that compared with a jump in deaths linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. Among their findings published in the peer-reviewed Journal of Medical Virology, U.S. deaths attributed to heart attacks or acute myocardial infarctions are, as they are typically known, shot up 14% in the first year of the pandemic. That's the first year of the pandemic. That's pre-vaccine. By the second year of the pandemic, the dramatic increases in heart attacks blew apart the models used to predict how many people would lose their lives to these events. Fatal heart attacks among adults ages 25 to 44 soared 29.9% over what was predicted. Deaths from heart attacks climbed by 19.6% for adults aged 45 to 64 and by 13.7% for ages 65 and older. These excessively higher rates of heart attack-related death have persisted throughout the pandemic, the Cedars-Sinai research found, including the possibility that COVID-19 could trigger or accelerate coronary artery disease. The scientists said more research has to be done to pinpoint risks. Again, make your own decisions. I want to play this video that Election Wizard posted. Australia sees a 17% increase in deaths from heart attacks. Experts are dumbfounded.
Pandemic has helped fuel a rise in the number of fatal cardiac arrests across the country, according to a new report. Let's bring in today's Ashlyn Krukellis in Brisbane for us. Morning, Ashlyn. What are health experts saying?
Jane, they say the data is concerning, and that's because it shows within the first 8 months of 2022, more than 10,200 Australians died due to heart-related disease, and that number is considered 17% higher than what would be considered normal. In this report this morning, health experts say quite simply the pandemic increased risk factors. They include the virus itself. Some studies show that some people have a higher likelihood of heart disease or stroke after COVID-19 infection. Then there's the fact that some people delayed medical treatment and therefore delayed going and getting their usual health checkups and getting diagnosis and then treatment. And then to a lesser extent, there's the fact that hospitals were extremely busy during this time. Perhaps reassuringly, though, the Heart Foundation says 2022 also led to a surge in people getting heart checks. And Jane, that is certainly something they recommend everyone do.
I got to be honest. I mean, these points make sense. I don't want to jump to any conclusions. I really want to just understand what's going on so I can be healthy so that you can know what's going on. And that means talking about all of these stories and what people think. But fair point, hospitals being, not all of them, but some of them being overwhelmed. I do think the media lied about a lot of the hospitals being overwhelmed because there are people going around filming hospitals that weren't overwhelmed. But there were hospitals that we've seen the videos of. Now, the weird thing is they kept using that same hospital from Italy over and over again, and they kept getting called up by fact checkers. But I have seen videos of some hospitals being overwhelmed. And we know that with these Democrat governors, they were taking COVID patients, and instead of using the comfort, like the naval, I think it was naval vessels that have hospitals in them, or the Javits Center, they put them in nursing homes, leading to more people dying. It stands to reason that with some of these hospitals being jammed up, you're not going to be able to go to the hospital. That's what they were saying. So let's say you're a dude who had a heart attack, and they rush you to the hospital and say, we're full. Well, now you're in trouble. But again, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just going to keep saying that. I love this just from NPR. Doctors warn that heart attacks spike this time of year. We get it. But this is from 2022. So here's what I did. WebMD says strokes may follow gender and seasonal patterns. This is from 2004. Yes, stroke season is real. Winter holidays bring more heart attack deaths than any other time of year. Now, this story is from the American Heart Association, but I do have a study that this is from AHA Journals, this is American Heart Association Journals. This one goes way back. This what's the date on this one? This one is 1999, and it points out that December is stroke and heart attack season. That's a fact. Okay. That being said, they're still saying we are seeing an increase. Entirely possible the increase is due to stress or who knows what. We have this story from October. COVID-19 surges linked to spike in heart attacks. I don't see why that's not a plausible reality here, considering many people think this thing was leaked from a lab. I would not be surprised. COVID-19 infection poses higher risk for myocarditis than vaccines. This is reported by the American Heart Association as well. So while WebMD is saying, yeah, you can get myocarditis, COVID's more likely to cause it. I don't know why that one's controversial either. I'm not saying the vaccine does or doesn't cause it. You can believe what you want. But if the issue is the spike protein, then why wouldn't COVID be causing some of these problems as well? Entirely possible. I think COVID is what's actually causing all of this. But again, ask your doctor. The Wall Street Journal's opinion, however, is that it may have been the lockdowns themselves. I want to just say this. Anecdotally, what we're hearing from a lot of people is that they suffered extreme side effects after vaccination. And we saw that documentary, Died Suddenly, where they say, that guy goes like, they've got these strange blood clots, and then you find out they're vaccinated. And I'm like, are you checking people if they aren't vaccinated? Like, I'm genuinely curious. If you are getting, for this documentary, if you're getting a bunch of corpses to embalm, and you're pulling out white fibrous clots, and you're like, they're all vaccinated, are you doing a correlation causation thing? Because, 70% of people got vaccinated, and more than once. That's the challenge. How many people came in, had these clots? Were you able to do a control? Were you able to take 50 people who died who were not vaccinated confirmed, 50 people who did, who vaccinated confirmed, so not vaccinated, vaccinated, and then actually check for clots? Because otherwise it's just like, dude, most people got this. So we have a problem of spurious correlation. And I think it's important too. Nobody should be forced to be medicated. And that's, I think, why people are so distrusting of this. The Wall Street Journal talks about Americans under 45 and the excess deaths. They say, for Americans under 45, there were more excess deaths without the virus in 2020 to 21 than with it. Now, some of that is pre-vaccine. Take a look at this chart. The blue is COVID deaths, and the gold yellow is non-COVID deaths. Among 18 to 44-year-olds, the majority of excess deaths were people who did not have COVID. So why did we see excess death? It's as simple as, choose your conspiracy theory, to be completely honest. I mean, there's also the coincidence theory, if you want to go with that one. Somebody ate a bat soup. Coronavirus was in the bat because bats have coronaviruses. And then they got sick. They spread it around. Everybody got it. It was particularly intense when it made the first leap from bat to human. That's possible, I guess. And now what we're seeing is excess death without the vaccine is due to environmental or structural changes that damaged or destroyed people's lives. What really matters, in my opinion, is that you hear all of this. There are a bunch of people, I think most of the right is very anti-vax. And I don't mean blanket like they oppose all vaccines. I'm saying they oppose this one, and then to varying degrees, they oppose all vaccines. I think it's weird. There's like a word for it. You're an anti-vaxxer. And it's kind of like, I don't care. Like, there's a bunch of vaccines I did get and a bunch that I didn't get. So, I don't know, whatever. I got like 5 before I flew to Venezuela. It's like hepatitis, typhus, yellow fever. Then there's, what was the other one? Yellow fever. I can't remember. They gave me a bunch. Tetanus, Hep A, 3. There was like 5 vaccines that I did get. I haven't got all of them. I'm not an anti-vaxxer because I said, yeah, I don't think I need that one. That's the stupidest thing ever. It's like the idea that just because COVID's going around and you don't get vaccinated, all of a sudden you're an anti-vaxxer. But that's the slur they've chosen. It's like a lot of people are very much in favor of vaccines. I think vaccines are an amazing technology. I got no issue with them, man. I go to doctors I trust. That's the only thing I can really say. Because I brought this up during the pandemic too, when the vaccine was coming out. I'm not here to say Scott Adams is right or wrong. I'm not here to say any of that because I don't know. Okay, I always just take the bro. I will never pretend to be an expert and just assert I have knowledge when I don't have it. But the one thing I brought to people when they were like, my doctor, I don't know if I trust my doctor. It's like, bro, look, I go to my doctor, and then I'm like, I got this, hurt my knee, and he's like, here, take this pill, methylprednisolone, and I'm like, I got no idea what that is. Methylprednisolone. This is a long time ago. I hurt my knee. Doctor gave me that. Apparently, it's like a steroidal anti-inflammatory or something. And it made my knee feel better. But I had no idea what it was. I'm like, I trust you, doc. I'll put whatever that strange chemical is in my body. And so that's how I feel about a lot of this. There are people, Scott Adams basically came out. He said, those who were naturally skeptical of government and big corporations were right. And I'm like, yeah. No, for sure. Like, I don't trust big corporations. They monetize symptoms. They don't cure diseases. Sometimes they cure diseases. No, I get it. It's not all evil, whatever. But they really do monetize symptoms. The government seeks to preserve itself. So good. But in the instance of trust, you shouldn't trust or distrust anybody outright. You trust but verify, I guess. In instance of the government, I think we're safe to say not to trust them. In instance of corporations, I think it's safe to say, like, we hold distrust. But what I mean to say, because let me try and clarify what I'm saying. If the government comes out and says everybody should, DDT is good for me or whatever, you can be like, my default position is not trusting you. I'll look into it, though, because I want to make sure it's right. If a fire truck's zooming down the street, that's an element of government. I think it's safe to say there's probably a fire. It's possible there is no fire, but I'll take their word for it. You know what I mean? In this instance, let me tell you. I go to my doctor. I ask questions. Not so much when I was younger. I fell, hit my knee. My knee was like swollen. And he took a look at it and said, there's no break. There's no tear. You screwed it up. Take these pills. And he gave me methylprednisolone or something. Something like that. I don't know. I think that's what it was. I could be wrong. Some steroidal anti-inflammatory. I said, fine. And it worked, I guess. And I was like, oh, whatever. It worked. So now that I'm older, I've been given prescriptions in the past few years. And I've looked up about them and been like, yeah, I'm not taking that stuff. So I did a trip to Mexico several years ago, and I got what's called Montezuma's Revenge. Well, you guys know what that is, right? Yeah. There's a bug in the water, but there was a concern because I had traveled so much for Vice and all that. You probably got parasites. It happens to everybody. And so doctor prescribes as like, look, you're traveling around all these places. Probably a good idea to, take some medicine in the event that you did get some parasites. Turns out it wasn't. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it was a few years ago. But the doctor asked me about one medicine, and I Googled it, and I'm like, yo, I'm not taking that. Those side effects are crazy. And they're like, okay, then don't. And I was like, okay. And that was it. And then I didn't have anything, fortunately. But this is the thing, too. Do you trust your doctor? When I got sick with COVID, called the hospital. Hospital said, do nothing. Good luck. And that's why when they're like, people are delaying treatment, I'm like, dude, I did not delay treatment. I got bad. I called. I said, hey, doc, help. Like, it's getting worse. Fever, shakes, couldn't breathe, hyperventilating. I'm like, I do not want to end up on a ventilator. So I did what any smart person would do. And I called the only person you can, Joe Rogan. No, but what really happened is I called the hospital and they just said, look, go to bed, lay down, and it's a virus. And they were like, look, the survival rate for someone your age is like 99.9, so I wouldn't worry about it. Just chill out, take your vitamins, blah, blah, blah. It started getting bad. Called Joe, and I texted him, and I was just like, I know you talked about it on your show. Was it really bad for you? Because you're fit as a fiddle, man. And then he was like, look, we talked. He's like, call a private doctor, ask him about it, because they'll figure out a regimen for you of like even vitamins. So I ended up getting monoclonal antibodies, a vitamin drip, and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, which NAD plus. I think Joe recently mentioned on the show he doesn't do that anymore. I think it's basically like a B vitamin derivative. Your body takes in B vitamins, it makes NAD, it helps with cellular regeneration or something like that. Boom, I was cured overnight. Not really cured, but I instantly felt better. And I think it was the monoclonal antibodies, to be honest. But the doctor also prescribed ivermectin. The ivermectin, we didn't get it until a few days later. And I said, look, doc, I feel completely fine. I don't want to take anything I don't have to. Never been a big proponent of ivermectin. And the doctor said, I'm your doctor. I prescribed you this treatment, and I want you to take this. And I said, okay. That's it. I mean, the doctor said, look, you're going to be fine. It's a one-time thing, and I just want you to take it. And I said, look, I'm not here to argue with the doctor. I'm not. I talked to him. They gave me a treatment. I felt a lot better. Then they said, take this thing. And I was like, I guess. My opinion on it is still lukewarm. I'm not here to tell you what to believe or what to do with your body. I can certainly tell you this when it comes to your body. Like, I did really well cutting out sugars and exercising more. I was exercising a lot now, cutting out the sugars. Weight just seems to come right off. It's fantastic. I felt better than ever. Seriously, you forget how good it feels when you start gaining, like when you gain some weight, you lose that weight. You're like, man, I always felt like this. I'm going to try avoiding that whole weight thing again. Well, look, that was me. My point is this: the media, YouTube, everybody was banning you if you talked about ivermectin, and they'd ban people if they even slightly talked about it. I've never been a big proponent of it. I think a lot of it's dubious. I really do. And what I don't like about this whole story is the tribalism. I'm not about to ever advocate for mandatory medication. Not going to happen. I don't even like fluoride in the water. People got to choose. People got to be informed. But that being said, you got to watch out. You got to watch out for the tribalism. I'm not going to sit here and simp for big corporations who are getting multi-billion-dollar guaranteed contracts off vaccines. But I'm not going to come out and just outright be like, I think everything is the vaccine, simply because that's what one faction of the culture war is saying. I'm going to say this. Do not expect me in certain areas to be the leader. I'll tell you a quick story. We play The Division. You ever played The Division? Good video game. I explain leadership to people with this game. You're in a like, what do they call it? Like a fire team or something? No, that's Destiny or whatever. I don't know. You got a team. You got 4 people, and you're going on a mission. The Division game is like a third-person shooter. And if I'm playing, I'm like, come with me. I'll tell you what to do because I know how to do this mission. I'll be like, okay, there's gonna be a guy here. All right, get up on the roof. You do this, do that. If I fail, I'll be like, I don't know. Does someone else want to take point? Because I can't get this one. And it's like we trust each other in different areas. There are certain things I feel strongly about. Free speech, I can tell you all about it. I can talk to you about foreign policy and war. I'm not a doctor, man. I can't talk to you about this stuff. So you can listen. I hope it's informative. And I hope everything you heard from this segment, you Google search, you double check, you Bing search, you DuckDuckGo, and then you go to your doctor and you say, tell me about these things. Like what's this all about? Let them tell you. And as I always say, if you find a doctor who can't, then maybe you found a bad doctor, and find a good one. Because Joe Rogan certainly did. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.